Episode 1 of Miss Marvel showed promise. Episode 2 fumbled the bag and solidified a lot of what I really didn't like. Episode 3 made me like it again with some sublime character moments, and Episode 4 made me hate the show. Hey everyone, I'm RV Rocks, and Miss Marvel has officially made me hopeless. Episode 4 takes us to Karachi, in which Kamala learns more about her heritage and basically cements down everything I didn't like about this show and this general era of MCU television. Let's start with the positives. I really like Miss Marvel's depiction of Pakistan. The city of Karachi in this show ditches the typical Hollywood portrayal and makes it more or less just look like a normal city, and that's refreshing. Even if I could have done without the typical Hollywood yellow filter that they put over everywhere that isn't the United States. I like all the scenes of Kamala just hanging out. The show really has been at its best when she just gets to be a normal nerdy teenager interacting with people. This has been the first episode that I have taken particular notice of the score. The soundtrack has always been pretty alright, but the actual orchestrations in the background really got me this time. Kamala's grandma in particular has a very ethereal sounding theme to accompany her entrance, and it's very nice on the ears. And I especially love the Miss Marvel suite. Every time Kamala does something cool, they throw in the bum 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 sting, and it never fails to hype me up. Okay, and that is all the major positives I have to talk about. Let's move on to what I didn't like about this episode. And behind the curtain is everything else. Episode 4 is very much indicative of everything I didn't like about this show. And as it rallies towards its climax, Miss Marvel is looking to go out with a whimper instead of a roar. And there are two main reasons for this. For one, it sidelines just about everything I was really loving in these past few episodes. Her developing relationships with Bruno, Nakia, and even Zoe, gone. Her family, mostly gone. Only her mom is with her in Karachi, and we never even get a proper follow-up with Amir and Taisha after Kamala ruined their wedding. I just got done praising how much I loved the whole it takes a village approach, only for them to remove the village. And it really bums me out that it looks like we're not going to see them again till episode 6, given the admittedly fun change of credits. The show basically forgoes everyone in Jersey to introduce new people in Karachi. So who do they introduce? Well, there's a few other family members that the show has no interest in making anywhere near likable. There's Kamala's grandma, who is interesting enough, and frankly, her whole dismissal of the Jinn thing makes me feel a lot better about the possible issues with that plotline. And then there's Kareem the Red Dagger, but I don't know if the show really even did the whole Red Dagger plotline. And Kareem brings me to my other big issue with the show in its current state. Kamala lacks agency as a protagonist, and too many scenes and plot beats are just her kind of reacting to other people's actions. In the comics, the trip to Karachi is more of a self-discovery trip Kamala takes after a big fallout with Bruno. In the show, she's basically begged to go to Karachi by her grandma and goes with her mom, so her mom can keep an eye on her. And while this episode does hit on those similar beats of self-discovery that the comic arc does, Kamala isn't making these choices on her own. She doesn't go to Karachi on her own, the Red Dagger's info dump to her rather than have her find out anything through her own volition. She doesn't even choose to fight the Jinn. They just kinda roll up on her and kill the older Red Dagger, who, let's be honest, we all knew he was gonna die the moment he showed up, right? The comic spells this out pretty blatantly after her first encounter with the Red Dagger, saying that her answers lie inside of her, not in another place. So the MCU adapts this scene by having her find the answers purely by going to another place. And speaking of Red Dagger, they did Kareem so dirty. The Red Dagger in the comics is one of my favorites because when he's introduced, he's basically a foil to Kamala. They're both awkward, nerdy teenagers parading as superheroes that are very dedicated to their cities. Hell, even their costumes are meant to parrot each other's silhouettes. In the MCU, Kareem is just a cool guy. They took another great character from the comics and just kind of made him into a generic warrior man who doesn't look like he'll be all that relevant if/when the show departs from Karachi, given that they removed the familial tie with him as well. Watch this guy get an MCU show, I swear to God. The MCU, or more specifically the Disney Plus shows, have such a fascination with this mystery box culture. Ask a million questions in episodes 1 through 3, slowly start to uncover them in episodes 4 and 5, and then they try to answer every question and do some huge ass epic fight scene in episode 6, resulting in some very odd finales. And the worst part is, this formula works for the most part. I liked WandaVision, I really liked Hawkeye, but Ms. Marvel doesn't have that many questions to ask. So they create MCU original questions, like where did Kamala's powers come from? Why did the Bengal give her powers? Just what happened at the partition? But creating these questions out of moments that weren't really big deals in the comics just to answer them becomes a tired exercise and makes me despise this show. I'll surely talk about this more next week with this maybe time travel plot, but it's hard to ignore this feeling that they're trying to make Ms. Marvel feel more ethnic by giving her this connection to the Jinn and this long backstory with the partition of India that was more just set dressing in the original comic. This revision of importance of certain events in the comics is really starting to make me hate this show. With events that move the story along in the comics being used more so as just small character moments in the show, and events that were just more character moments now being huge important stepping stones for the plot in the MCU, it really demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of the original work. A misunderstanding that wasn't present in other large MCU character changes. Isn't it curious how this misunderstanding has only come out for the one MCU property titled after a brown girl? And I'll be honest, looking at this show in a full objective manner, it's a fine show. It's no worse than Loki or Moon Knight, but it's not special. Ms. Marvel is a character who changed the landscape of comics. Of course, she's no Spider-Man or Batman, her plots aren't world-shattering, but to call her unimportant would be a waste of air. Ms. Marvel is very much an icon in her own right, especially to younger fans of the medium, and I hate that this show is making her look so average. With every passing episode, the magnificent Ms. Marvel is feeling more and more like the mediocre Ms. Marvel, but there's always the chance it will get better, so I guess I'll just have to wait and see what happens in episode 5. And if you want to see me talk about episode 5, then why don't you subscribe to RV Rocks and ring the bell, like this video, and comment your thoughts on Ms. Marvel. I can almost guarantee you, as I sit here right now, that I will name this video something inflammatory for outrage clicks, so please comment your thoughts or come talk to me on Twitter at RV of Rocks. It's what I am genetically programming you to do. But before you do any of that, I have been RV Rocks, and thank you so much for watching. See ya!